Cattle drive to nowhere. Nash squinted against the Kansas sun as he led his ragtag group of cowhands onto the dusty trail, hoping to hide his nerves behind a confident face. The cattle lowed restlessly, sensing the inexperience in their new handlers as they stumbled through the open plains without a proper guide. Emma, disguised in a worn hat and oversized boots, adjusted her stance to keep up, hoping no one would notice her too soft hands or hesitant stride. Thorn, the grizzled veteran, rode silently at the rear, his wary eyes scanning the horizon as if he knew more trouble lay ahead. The sun beat down relentlessly, leaving the cowhands parched and irritable, and Nash struggled to keep them from arguing. Emma's horse stumbled over rough ground, but she gritted her teeth and pressed on, determined not to show any weakness. A sudden gust kicked up dust, making Nash cough and temporarily blinding the group as they plodded through the unforgiving landscape. Thorn watched as Nash struggled with the cattle and the terrain, his doubt about this journey growing with every mile. A distant storm cloud loomed on the horizon, its dark edges promising rain, but none dared hope for a break from the drought. The cattle grew increasingly restless, sensing the tension in the air as if they, too, were aware of an approaching trial. Thorn finally voiced his concern, telling Nash that driving cattle without any support crew was bound to end in disaster. Nash, feeling the pressure, insisted they push forward, unwilling to show his own doubts to the others. The first rumble of thunder sounded, low and ominous, as the storm approached, casting a shadow over their path. Emma pulled her hat low, bracing herself as the wind picked up, the air thick with the promise of rain. When the rain began, it was light, almost refreshing, but soon it turned into a relentless downpour, blinding them all. The cattle began to panic, their hooves slipping in the mud as the cowhands struggled to keep control of the herd. A bolt of lightning cracked overhead, sending a wave of terror through the cattle, scattering them across the plains. Nash shouted for everyone to help round them up, but the chaos made it impossible to keep track of the animals. Emma chased after a calf that had broken away, nearly losing her balance in the slick mud as she tried to rope it back. Thorn's experience showed as he deftly maneuvered his horse through the downpour, rallying stray cattle with calm efficiency. Nash watched in frustration, feeling the weight of his inexperience as the cattle resisted his every command. The rain finally subsided, leaving the trail muddy and treacherous, slowing their progress even further. The cowhands, exhausted and soaked, regrouped with the cattle huddled together, too weary to question Nash's leadership. Thorn glanced at Nash, his silence a reminder that the trail boss was barely holding the journey together. As they pressed on, the horizon seemed to stretch endlessly, with no sign of shelter or reprieve in sight. Emma, nursing a blister on her hand, rode beside Nash, silently hoping for some sign they were getting closer. Days passed without any towns or water sources, the open plains offering little but mirages in the heat. Thorn murmured his doubts to Emma, suggesting that their mission might have been doomed from the start. Nash overheard and snapped back, telling them they'd finish the drive even if they reached the railhead with just one cow. Emma admired Nash's determination but wondered if stubbornness was leading them straight into disaster. That night, under a starless sky, a distant howl reminded them that they were not alone on the plains. Thorn tightened his grip on his rifle, warning the others that rustlers might be trailing their herd. Just before dawn, a group of shadowy figures emerged from the dark, making a move to steal some of the cattle. Nash shouted a warning, and the cowhands scrambled to defend the herd, thrusting into the chaos. Emma, heart pounding, managed to fend off a rustler, surprising herself with her own bravery. Thorn led a counterattack, his years of experience guiding them as they pushed the rustlers back. By morning, the rustlers were gone, leaving the exhausted cowhands with fewer cattle and more doubts. Nash felt the loss keenly, blaming himself for the dwindling herd and wondering if he was cut out for this job. Emma offered quiet encouragement, reminding Nash that they'd survived the attack together, which was something. The days grew longer and hotter, each mile testing their endurance as they struggled to keep the herd moving. Thorn's suspicions deepened, believing they'd been sent on a near-impossible mission with no real chance of success. The group grew silent, each member wondering if they'd ever reach their destination or if they'd be swallowed by the plains. One evening, they reached a swollen river that blocked their path, forcing Nash to make a difficult decision. Nash ordered them to cross, knowing it was risky but feeling they couldn't afford to turn back. The water surged around their legs as they guided the cattle across, each step treacherous in the swift current. Emma's horse slipped, nearly dragging her under, but Thorn was there, pulling her to safety just in time. The river crossing cost them more cattle, but they emerged on the other side, battered yet still moving forward. Nash knew they couldn't endure much more, but he pushed the group on, clinging to the hope of reaching the railhead. As they crested a ridge, they finally saw their destination, a railhead, quiet and deserted in the evening light. The silence was overwhelming, the empty railhead a grim reminder of how far they'd come with nothing to show. Nash dismounted, feeling a mix of relief and despair as he realized the railhead had been abandoned. Thorn cursed under his breath, his suspicions confirmed that they'd been sent on a fool's errand. Emma looked around, her heart sinking as she thought of the hardships they'd endured for an empty promise. Nash gathered the cowhands, his voice steady but hollow, telling them they had a choice to make. With the railhead deserted, they could either head back empty-handed or take their share of the cattle and move on. Thorn suggested they split the herd, using it to start anew somewhere far from empty trails and empty promises. Emma agreed, feeling a spark of excitement at the thought of forging her own path in the wilderness. Nash nodded, his pride tempered by hard-won wisdom, knowing that they'd survived because they'd leaned on each other. Together, they divided the cattle, each heading into the unknown with newfound courage and the promise of a fresh start.